So some of the stories, to share with you here in just a second is ransomware is a different version of malware. This is becoming really, really popular, unfortunately. What it's designed to do, this particular type of malware, it infects the computer and it encrypts the data on the machine. So what does that mean, encrypts it? It kind of takes everything that every bit of data on there and turns it, codes it. And the reason I have a very definite story here, this is one of the things that prompted me to write this class, is I had one of my longest time clients, retail business, had a computer, a server, and like 2 other workstations attached to it. Just one of those machines, and we don't know if it was like an employee clicking on an email or where it came from, but it infected that one machine. And within seconds, it infected every single other one of their machines, their server and their other workstations. So it was spread throughout the entire network, and it rendered their data completely useless because that encryption meant you couldn't use it. The programs used didn't understand the data anymore. What you have to have is a code to unlock the encryption. And the computer is literally held for ransom. That's why it's called ransomware. What they demand is they'll demand a large sum of money for that encryption code. And at this time, and I'll tell you what happened in their particular story, without that encryption code, there is no solution. There's no way to unlock it. Now, with each one of these new ones, there's always a fight. We try to come out with a solution after we figure out and identify the problem. This particular one was so new, there was no solution for them. They either had to pay the ransom, they had to pay the money, and then, of course, you cross your fingers and you hope that you're dealing with an honest criminal that's going to give you the code after you give them the money, or you start all over, brand new, wipe everything clean, and you recreate the lost data. So the it can't happen to me mindset, this doesn't fly. I mean, I was even though we did a lot for ourselves, I didn't really bother to educate many of my clients. So this client, they've been a client of mine for going on 16 years. They were hit with a ransomware, and it devastated their business. It resulted in a complete and total loss of all of their systems. The worst thing is, too, and we're looking at the accounting side of things, we're like, okay, how do we help them? What do we do with the accounting part of it? And we say, have you been making backups? And they say, yeah, we were, but it was on this external drive that's connected to our computer systems. It took out all their backups. Luckily, in our office, we had a backup because we helped, convert them over to QuickBooks and do all that we were working with them. But it was a year old. So they lost an entire year worth of accounting data. Just to kind of share with you, and they were okay, I asked their permission, what the little snapshot looked like. There was this weird little thing that appeared on their screen. And literally it said, for decrypt files, write you country to, and it had an email address. So, we did contact them. We reached out to every IT person we could in town and say, is there a fix for this? What do we do? I'll share that with you again here. What do we do about this? And they said, well, there is no fix for this one. You can see what the ransom is. Now, they were wanting Bitcoin. At the time, it was $753,000 worth. And we just checked now just to see because Bitcoin's going up so much. It's $1.2 million now for that little bit of Bitcoin they were wanting. Our business, they were too small to afford that kind of a ransom, and there was no guarantee that it would unlock the data. So, preventing is definitely an important aspect of it. In that case, we would have been much better if the client had a contingency plan. Okay, just in case this happens, I have, encrypted backups myself. They're off-site. We would have things to restore them instantly. Instead, we spend a great deal of energy and time and money recreating lost data. So this is an area that affects clients as much as us, but if you think of that happening right now to you, if you had a ransomware attack and they're demanding a really large ransom, if you couldn't pay that, do you have a contingency plan? Do you have a way to make sure that you can access the client information again? And if you can't, that's one of those areas you can say, okay, I need to do something different because that's much bigger of a risk. And a lot of these guys, honestly, they don't care. They're attacking every open area they can. And really big companies are what they're going after. And big companies will pay the ransom, believe it or not, which, of course, encourages them to do more. So that's one of the areas that we say is definitely a risk area. If we look a little bit further into our top 5, we have vulnerabilities. What does that mean? It means any sort of a flaw or weakness in a system that hackers are able to exploit. Software is written at such an enormous and an incredibly crazy speed that our risk of security holes are just naturally, it just comes with a risk. Because the software vendor then must provide updates or patches as they become aware of different risks. And then, of course, it closes those holes once it's discovered. But the user system, our system, it has to be updated for that patch to work. So that process of finding it and patching it and then pushing out those updates and then the user finally installing it actually can take a little time. So if you think of our usual ones we hear about, operating systems. So back in the days, Windows XP, Windows 7, Windows 8, all these different ones come to mind. Eventually over time, we become more accustomed to set the machine to just go ahead and look for software updates. So that slowed those numbers of weak systems within the operating system. So now in the era of Windows 10 and everything that comes out beyond, we're just kind of trained to that a little bit better. So what did the criminals do? They're always shifting, right? They shifted their approach and they're saying, well, okay, they're getting pretty good at the Windows thing. Let's look for other applications. So now Adobe Flash, Java, other types of applications out there, that's what they're going after, because now maybe we're not paying attention and we're not updating those softwares as much. We're like, another update? They're always coming up with updates. What an annoyance, what an inconvenience to us, right? Update those systems and those softwares, because if you're not aware that you need to do that, that's what they're now targeting, is because it's a way into your system that's easier maybe than the operating system, because you're updating Windows or you're updating your operating system. So one other type, we talk about zero-day vulnerability. What does that mean? Because there's so many of them discovered every single day, it's pretty astounding. A 0 day means it's kind of like patient zero, I guess you can say. There's no remedy available yet at that moment of discovery. So when it starts infecting machines, if you're one of those that hits it on 0 day, there's not a fix yet. So to fight it, what you have to do is try to keep everything updated all the time, have very good malware, ransomware, virus protection, all these things. But a 0 day means there's not a available remedy yet. But as soon as that's determined, they'll push out fixes for it. So at least it helps to fight it as soon as the risk is figured out and a patch is determined for it. So you got to push it out to everything, though. Servers, workstations. What about our laptops? Things that we don't think about. And this is where you want to have that conversation with your IT guy and say, hey, are you doing this? Your routers, your switches, your firewalls, these are all areas that help protect your whole network from those attacks at the beginning. Are you keeping those updated? Do they have firmware updates that they need? Are you doing what you need to help update as best as possible to prevent those attacks? Mobile devices, do you know that even those have risk areas? Are you updating their software as often as they are needed? It can feel like a daunting task, honestly. All this stuff I'm like telling you about, I'm sure at times you can go, okay, that's a whole lot more than I expected to learn from this class. It feels like that's a lot. But the nice thing is knowing about it, that you've already got rid of one of your top 5 risks. You're now no longer ignorant of it. You're knowledgeable about what could be going on, and you can start taking steps to get on top of it. We look at hardware vulnerabilities. There's one, this I actually just put in because it came out last month. Wi-Fi security weakness. It's called CRACK is the abbreviation, but it has to do with a flaw that was discovered within Wi-Fi. So if your network is on a Wi-Fi, you can have an instant conversation with your IT guy or handle this right now. This is a brand new, like literally just a few weeks ago, weakness that's now being exploited. It allows for your Wi-Fi to be hacked, and until corrected, you might actually want to disconnect it and just say, hey, I know I'm working off of Wi-Fi, get a hold of whoever it is that assists you in this realm and see if you can get that patch, get a fix for that. So these are things now, it's that knowledge thing. If you're keeping up with on the knowledge, then you can help stem any potential risks right at the beginning. So this is one I added in here just to throw that at you so you would know that it exists. And there's a little bit of a link here if you want to know more about the crack hack that's just been discovered.